viewed as a news source. Any names, places, or likenesses mentioned are purely fictional, and any information discussed is purely speculative. Guest opinions are their own and do not reflect those of anyone else. Wherein the Folk is not responsible for content accuracy of any stories that are told or what people do with these stories. This show is vulgar, sometimes graphic, and due to its content, it should not be viewed by anyone actually.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Where the Folk. I'm glad to see everybody's joining us today. We have a special guest with us, Sarah from Paranormally Correct.
Yay!
Hello.
Hello, Rebecca Wood. Thank you for joining. I hope we're live. Are we live? No, I'm just...
Well, yeah, we're definitely live. Hey, Landa.
But thank you all for tuning in. Like I said, tonight we're going to do a True Crime episode. We're going to be covering Carl, Eric, Charlie Brandt, B-R-A-N-D-T, Brandt.
We haven't done a True Crime or a Crue Trime in a long time.
Yep. It's been a minute.
And I like ones I've never heard of, and I had not heard of this one.
I haven't either. This is the first True Crime episode I did zero research for, so I'm going to totally take the lead on it tonight.
Thanks, Clarence.
You're welcome, sir.
So, Charlie Brandt, that's one of the reasons that I picked it up is because it's not, middle of the mall serial killer that everybody's done a million times. There's definitely been some good coverage on it in the past, which is how I was able to kind of put it together for us. But just a little bit of background. Hey, Matthew Bortles. Landa said, "Good job, Cecil." By the way,
that's how I do
it. So, Carl Eric Charlie Brandt was born to German immigrants, Herbert and Lisa Brandt. The family moved frequently due to Herb's job with International Harvester, ultimately settling in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1968. From all accounts, he grew up completely normal. He was in a completely normal family, did well in school. The only sort of off thing that his teachers reported was that he was really quiet. So that could make any of us serial killers, really.
Yeah.
It's there was no big red flags, but the family often vacationed in Florida, where he developed a love for hunting small game with his father, which is not inherently a red flag either. I know lots of people that
I used to love hunting.
Yeah, I grew up with it. Yeah, then, of course, that could say something about us.
Yeah, I mean, my dad could be a serial killer, I guess.
Let's not put it out there, but
yeah, that's why I don't do the 23andMe. I just don't want to know. You know what I mean? What a terrible way to go down if you were the Golden State Killer, like you went that whole time just eluding everybody, and then you get popped by somebody doing a 23. I'd be so pissed.
I'd be like,
and it's happened multiple times.
Yeah,
not for serial killers so much.
I'll just be like, my daddy got around a lot. My DNA's everywhere. Couldn't possibly be me.
He was like that gynecologist with 1,000 kids.
Exactly.
What?
Haven't you heard
yeah, there was
a
gynecologist not too. I mean, I forget how long ago it's been, but yeah, he instead of using donated samples for artificial insemination, he was using his own, and it's estimated he has about 1,000 children.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So does he have to pay child support for all of them?
He should have to.
Yeah, he should have to.
That is wild, actually. That may be more wild than this story.
I'd be out for blood.
somehow Rebecca's not surprised. So anyway, Charlie was completely normal up until the age of 13. When he shocked his family and the community by suddenly and inexplicably shooting his parents at point blank range in their Fort Wayne home. His father was shaving in the bathroom while his wife, who was 8 months pregnant, was taking a bath. She was killed instantly along with her unborn child. His father was shot at point blank range. He survived.
Wow.
He also pointed the gun point blank at his sister, pulled the trigger, and the gun jammed. His sister then calms him down enough, like apparently he was hysterical, calmed him down enough to get him to put down the gun, and then ran and got neighbors. He claimed to have no memory of the attack and said that he was in a trance-like state during the incident. The community was completely dumbfounded, saying that he had no problems. Again, no signs of issues. He was examined by a bunch of doctors who were unable to determine what caused him to do this to his family. So, because they couldn't determine it and couldn't decide whether he was suffering from mental illness or not, they just let him slide on it.
I mean, you see this a lot over the years of us covering true crime and things like that. Anytime that we've done a serial killer, it seems like they always have an opportunity to lock them away forever.
Yes.
Multiple times, and they just don't. Like it happened with Samuel, oh my God, Samuel Little, Ed Edwards, all kinds of people. Like they have them dead to rights so many times, and then they just kind of let them go. It really sounds like maybe, and this happened in Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne, was it?
Mm-hmm. This particular section happened in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
And his father wasn't his father in the service or so?
I don't know that he was in the service.
So he worked for International Harvester.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of shoots that theory to pieces. But usually the parents are like in the army, so I always felt like it might be like an MK Ultra thing. Like,
yeah, I understand that it's in the right time period, and later in his life, which we'll get to, Charlie actually worked for Lockheed Martin.
Ooh.
So he wasn't a dumb guy by any means. Maybe just getting caught was that's usually the end, right?
He doesn't look. I mean, look at him. He looks like a pretty stable human being.
It could be. He could be. Steve Irwin's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The brown.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, Steve Irwin's serial killer brother.
Yeah.
Man, don't do Steve dirty like that. Come on now.
So the
Okay,
family.
I got a better one then. The guy that does that home thing where they give away a new home to a family in need. What's his name? No. This is a guy that they go in and like rebuild houses for people who, I'll think of it. Go ahead.
Crikey.
So basically the family kept it a secret after they cut him loose, and the two younger sisters were told that their mother had died in a car accident. And it is unclear, and this is kind of one of the points of contention later in life, if maybe he never even told his wife that this happened. His wife might not have had any clue that he had killed his parents or killed his mom.
I mean, is that a first date conversation? Like,
probably, right?
Just so you know, I spent a little time in the psych unit. What for? Nothing big. I just murdered my tried to kill the rest of my family.
Well, I mean, honestly, you should probably just put that in your dating profile.
Put it on your profile.
Yeah, just get it out of the way.
Do you look true crime?
Look how Gypsy Rose is doing. I got on TikTok the other day, and Gypsy Rose had 70,000 people watching and giving her gifts.
I just put
it out there in the world. If you're out,
Gypsy Rose, Charles Manson, that shit. She didn't kill anybody, but you know.
Well,
Well, I'm sorry, but her mother deserved to die.
Moving forward.
moving forward. Hey, Stephen. So after his release, they ended up relocating to Ormond Beach, Florida. While the rest of the family eventually moved back to Indiana, Brandt stayed in Florida with his grandparents. This is in 1973. Fast forward to 1984, he graduates with a degree in electronics and becomes a radar specialist for Ford Aerospace in Astor, Florida. So again, not a dumb guy by any means, except that he's a serial killer.
I want to say something about that. Most serial killers are not like dumb individuals. They're typically pretty bright for the most part. Like
some,
a lot of them. I mean, we're not talking about Henry. You know what I'm saying? Like we're talking like Bundy and all them. Like they get away with this stuff for a reason. Like they're pretty quick usually.
Yeah. So in 1986, he marries Teresa Helfrich, or Terry, as she went by. The couple settled in a beach house on Big Pine Key, Florida. And again, it was unclear whether she ever really knew about his past, but Charlie's sister did tell him that he should tell her about it. Now, sidebar. This house in Big Pine Key, Florida, I looked it up. If you just search the address of the house, nothing about these murders come up. Nothing about Charlie comes up. And in 2015, this house was for sale for $263,000, a beach house.
Wow.
And I looked it up. The same house is $504,000 today, and still no. I'm sure they have to disclose it somehow. You know what I mean? That it was a serial killer's house, but
so yeah. Not only was he really good at radar stuff, but he had foresight to buy this piece of property.
Yeah, that would appreciate it.
Yeah, that's going to double in value in like what, 35, 40 years. Good deal.
Yeah, so this leads us to the 1989 incident. On July 16th, Charlie was, again, a radar technician. He was employed by Lockheed Martin, and they were living about 300 yards where a woman named Sherry Pericho was slaughtered. Mrs. Brandt told her brother-in-law that her husband came home that night wet, covered in blood, around the time of the murder, but he claimed that it was from filleting fish. This is a picture of Sherry that Cecil has pulled up. He also resembled the sketch of a man seen crossing US 1 near the crime scene on that same night. So it was said that that may have been what convinced or like threw up red flags to Terry. Because when we get later on in the story, it becomes kind of evident that Terry probably knew something was wrong. But Sherry had her throat slashed. Her head was almost completely severed, and her heart was removed.
Oh, goodness.
And this is pretty common in these attacks. He was really brutal, to the point where I think after Sherry was murdered, there was headlines talking about a Florida Ripper. Like that was kind of the nickname that they were given at the time.
I'm in Florida though. I'm in the 80s, especially. Like I feel like there was just a lot of insane people, like even more than there are now. Just kind of roaming around. Like I'm from Florida. Like I lived in Florida in the 80s or whatever. My dad claimed that he almost picked up Arlene Warmos one time. Whenever he lived down there, he claimed it. I don't know how true it is. And I said, well, Dad, she was a prostitute. Why would you pick her up?
Right. Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, everybody needs a ride every once in a while."
He just think that one through before he told the story, huh?
But like Ted Bundy into his run there, like there was and Otis and Otis, what's his last name? I can't remember his last name, but they made portrait of a serial killer, and Otis was his buddy. He was in the area. There was all kinds of crazy people in that area, and they still are, but just not as prolific.
Florida man.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're calling Cecil now?
Yeah, Cecil's definitely a Florida man.
Not really.
All he needs is some bath salts.
From the swamp to the hills, baby.
So
we're going to leave it alone on whether that's an improvement or.
Yeah. So this is going to come up later on too, but so the one we just talked about was in it was in 1989, and around the same time there was so many of these happenings, just brutal slayings that they think that he could be connected to. I think once they eventually did his profile, they think that he may have killed like over 30 people. But they can't pin it because there's just no DNA evidence. There's no evidence of all these, but they were just brutal in the way that he was doing these. But in 2004, which is a huge gap, right? Like he didn't just stop, I don't imagine. But in 2004, this is 15 years after Sherry's mutilated body was pulled from the water. Around the time of Hurricane Ivan, Michelle Lynn Jones, who was an advertising executive with the Golf Channel, invited her uncle and aunt, who was Charlie and Terry, to stay with her at her home in Maitland near Orlando until the storm passed. So Charlie jumped at the chance to spend time with his 37-year-old niece, who he habitually referred to as Victoria's Secret. That's not a red flag at all.
Real winner there.
Wow.
Yeah. So around this time, Michelle spoke with her mother, who was Terry's sister, Mary Lou Jones, as well as several friends after the Brandts arrived. On Monday, September 13th, Terry talked to her sister on the phone and informed her that they should be heading home to check on their house. But Charlie was insisting they stay one more day. And this is a picture on the right. You have Charlie's wife, Terry. And on the left is who he's referring to as Victoria's Secret. So, yeah, it's definitely escalating. He's basically demanding to stay another night.
I know this is out of pocket, and I hate to interrupt you, but look at this wallpaper. It's dollar signs. I want this.
They might be at a bar or something.
I want that. But anyways.
So yeah, on the left was Michelle Jones, their niece. So the same day that he was insisting on staying another day, Michelle called her friend Lisa Emmons, who was planning to visit that evening, and asked her not to come because the Brandts were drinking and were, I guess, being abusive toward each other. That phone call where she told her friends that was the last time that anybody ever heard from Michelle. Wow. And she was no longer answering her phone. So fast forward. So this is the 13th when the phone call happens. On the 15th, she was supposed to go to a dinner with her friend Debbie Knott. After failing to appear to the dinner, she drove to the house at 390 Hickory Drive, and while speaking on the phone to Michelle's mother, attempted to enter the home. But before she went into the garage, she was struck by a nauseating smell. Because you know how hot it is in Florida, right? Which is terrible. I'm sure that would be horrible. So she looks through the windows and sees the silhouette of a man hanging from the rafters and called the police. Investigator Rob Hemmert shows up, he was shocked by a gruesome sight of a man in a white shirt and blue shorts dangling in the sweltering hot garage. Like you can imagine the smell that was coming out of that place. But he says, this is a quote from him. I could see Charlie Brandt hanging there from the rafters. He was hanging from a bed sheet, which was around his neck, and there was a ladder close by to his body. When officers entered the residence, they discovered the bloody body of Terry Brandt, his wife, in a sitting position at one end of the sofa. She was wearing nothing but a yellow T-shirt, and an autopsy would reveal that she had been stabbed 7 times. Even worse than that, when investigators entered the master bedroom, they were greeted by a scene that would, really solidify the Ripper trope for him. So Michelle, his niece, or what was left of her, was lying on her bed. She had been decapitated, disemboweled. Her heart had been removed, which is sort of his MO. Her breasts were sliced off, and her left leg was detached at the hip. The body parts, including the head, were also on the bed. Scattered on the floor were an assortment of her bras and panties that had been sliced with a knife. Police determined that Brandt had used knives from her kitchen for the handiwork. And at some point during the assault, he removed his bloody clothing and dropped everything on the bedroom floor. That's brutal.
That's really brutal. It really makes me wonder because I'd love to know the backstory of what led him to be so aggressive. Killing people's one thing, it's horrible to do that, but the way that he did it was everything was like a passion murder almost. It's really strange.
Well, do you think it goes back to gutting animals? You know what I mean? It's almost like he's field dressing people. I've field dressed animals before, and I never got a euphoric feeling or nothing. No. I just say it
liked it. I really never liked it having to do it, but I mean, maybe. What do you all think?
Like I said, that seems so over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, for no, evident, no reason, that you can drag it back to, because with his parents, it was almost like crime of passion in the heat of the moment. And then he goes from that to that. And I do agree with what you were saying about the fact that he couldn't have gone dormant during that 15-year period. And there have been a lot of bodies found and unclaimed or, unsolved around Florida. Not talking about your home state, Cecil, but they're kind of known for it.
You guys remember when this is so random, it's just kind of sort of related, not related to the murders or anything, but do you remember the Gabby Petito thing?
Yeah.
When they were looking for her, they found so many bodies that were completely unrelated to the case. Just they would have never found if they wasn't looking for her.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier than what you think for people to get away with some of this stuff.
It's those trucker murderers.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we covered that a while back. What did they say? That there's usually 500 active
serial killers.
Yeah.
And,
you got.
I'm hoping I know mine well enough to know I'm not living with one.
What if he was? Would you ever know? Is the thing.
There would be signs. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not being judgmental or anything, but to me, there would have to be signs.
And Rebecca, she said, "I wonder why they always go so overboard," and it makes her question if he kept parts of his victims.
I mean, it's possible. Think about Ed Kemper. There's always a backstory on why people go so ham on people. Ed's whole thing was that he had a harsh relationship with his mother, and at the end of that whole saga, he ended up taking his mother's head and doing crazy things with it. And Bundy elicited his the way that he treated victims to, porn back,
Mhm.
which I don't know about that, but I think that was
Well, you
more
have
like,
to wonder what kind of porn is he watching.
oh, he's reading it. I listed that more to like the comic books and stuff he read, like the true crime comic books of the day, because like every one of them would have somebody sneaking up behind a woman and things like this.
Mhm.
This is a grotesque subject that you picked, Tolly. I'm not going to take any part of this. But
You said you wanted to do true crime. We haven't done one in a while, so this
But-
is my ode to you for True Crime Day.
anytime,
Crue Trime in Chris's honor.
yeah, anytime that you get into this, so you're going to get into the weeds. It seems like, I don't know. I really want to find out his psychology.
I think in order, so here's just my personal thoughts about it. Like I think in order to kill Terry, she probably accused him of something. Like I don't think he would blow his alibi like that or blow his cover unless he was like forced to.
Yeah.
So and one of the things that I read while looking into this is it's thought after they found Sherry's body and he came home covered in blood that she started keeping a diary of his odd behaviors. So it's possible that maybe they had one too many alcoholic beverages and she started spilling the beans to her niece, and he hears it and just loses it.
That, or they're drinking and start making accusations towards each other. Where were you on this night? You were gone this night, and then this girl gets missing. I mean, there are multiple things that could have.
It had to be something crazy happen for him to just snap and kill his wife.
Right.
Because they weren't even at home.
Right.
So
and what kind of strikes me as unusual is it's very rare you hear of a serial killer committing suicide unless they are imminently going to be caught. Because the only one that I personally was familiar with, when the police were surrounding him, he killed himself. So that's really the only time I've ever heard of one doing that, is when they just didn't figure they were going to get by with it.
Yeah, I mean, he was in a foreign place. So I'm sure if they would have been at their house, he would have probably got rid of the bodies. And you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think he was just in an unfamiliar place. He snapped. It was a heat of the moment thing. And he knew he was got and just took care of business.
Right.
So there was an investigation and some discoveries made. So a search of his home revealed disturbing evidence of his obsession with human anatomy and violence. No surprise that he had extensive collections of Victoria's Secret catalogs, tons of surgery-themed books, posters, clippings, and internet searches related to autopsy photos and snuff films. So he was probably on rotten.com back in the day. I had to throw that out there. I regret it.
I don't know if I completely missed this. Morgana said that she was keeping track of him. I mean, did you say that? Because it's literally wrote out in this that she was keeping a diary because she thought that she was married to a murderer.
Yeah, I know I put that in there, but it doesn't ever say anything about the FBI like disclosing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Huh.
So there are accounts, like I said, of a diary that she was keeping track of him with. Holly.
Man, my wife looks at me strange sometimes. I need to start searching the house just to see if she's like trying to accuse me of something.
Maybe she is the one that should be watched after.
Maybe she does act awful sweet. Like
she does. She does.
So, kind of like the Mr. Rogers syndrome. You can't be that nice and not have some kind of skeleton in your closet.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Bones at the very least.
So after seeing the posters, and did I send you a picture of the posters, Cecil? Like one of the anatomy posters that he had?
Yes, sir.
I'll let you pull that up while I'm reading the next part. So investigators, after seeing all the stuff in his house, they begin to suspect that he was responsible for unsolved murders. And a lot of the anatomy stuff that he had was like female oriented. So due to his modus operandi, which was extreme mutilation and the removal of organs, similar to field dressing, they reopened 26 unsolved cases. That's ones that just had enough to be sort of tangible for him. Like I said earlier, nobody will ever know the real number. But one of the ones that he was definitely linked to was the 1988 murder of Lisa Saunders. And so this is actually a year before Sherry. Or Lisa Saunders was a tiny woman. She was 4 foot 10 inches tall, and she had battled leukemia for years. She was the youngest of 6 children and had grown up in Michigan, but had spent many vacations with her family in the Keys. So when she decided she wanted to be a nurse, she enrolled in the Florida Keys Community College nursing program and relocated to Big Pond in October of 1988. On the night of Friday, December 16th, 1988, the 20-year-old attended a party on No Name Key. There were a lot of people at the gathering, and the last time anyone recalled seeing her was around 9:30 when she left on foot with the intention of going home. She never arrived, and the following day, her parents reported her missing. Shortly after that, her body was discovered beside an unpaved, no-name road near a gravel pit. She had been badly beaten, stabbed, and dragged behind a vehicle by a rope tied around her neck. Her heart, brain, eyes, neck muscle, colon, vagina, ovaries, fallopian tube, bladder, thyroid gland, and pieces of her lungs were missing or savaged. Although the general consensus was that it could have been vultures and other predators that had done some of that, her mother at the time was like, I don't believe for a minute that it was animals.
Well, that is so.
That's heavy.
Yeah, I mean, that extreme, you would almost expect there to be anger or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Landa. I'm not even good at Rebecca. Yeah, he does keep. Yeah, I don't know what he was doing with them, but it seems like that's a recurring theme. Another one that he was definitely linked to was the 1995 murder of Darlene Toller. She was 38 years old, and she was a sex worker from Miami whose body was found missing her head and her heart, again, wrapped in plastic and blankets, and it was discovered dumped in a grassy area near a highway that Brandt used regularly. And he kept a mileage record of his travels, which showed an entry for 100 miles on the day of her murder, roughly the same driving distance between Big Pine Key and the area where Darlene's body was found. And this is the only picture of Darlene that we could find.
Did we not do a gold star warning at the beginning of this? Like, we should have gave a warning. Anyway.
Well, yeah, we do a warning. It's very graphic.
Yeah, nobody should watch this.
Yes, yeah, we do a good warning at the beginning.
But come on, it is a Crue Trime, so what else would you be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a middle of the mall one, or we could just go ham with it. You know what I mean?
I go balls deep. Let's do it.
So another potential victim that they believe that he was involved with was the 1978 murder of Carol Sullivan, who was only 12 years old. I believe at the time he would have been like 14 or 16, but she was abducted from a school bus stop in Volusia County, Florida. Her skull was found in a bucket, and she was suspected to have been decapitated. he lived in the area at the time, but this is one where they do not have concrete evidence that would link him. So that's the big ones that he was possibly linked to.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Why would they suspect she was decapitated if they found her head in a bucket?
It's the police. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. You know, we found a lone head in a bucket.
I mean, it's kind of like that detective mentality, like, oh, he was shot 6 times in the back, suicide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That happens more than you think.
There you go, Landa. It fell off.
Yeah.
Was it Beetlejuice, the zombie dude?
Yeah.
His head kept falling off.
So the psychological profile. So they did a posthumous analysis, and I don't know. This is a question that so don't ask me like how they determine this. I'm assuming there's something with the brain they look at, but they determined after looking at him posthumously that he was a serial killer. So I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
With me?
Like, anybody,
yeah.
anybody.
Usually they've come to find that usually there's something wrong with the temporal lobe. Like they've had some kind of head injury, like to the front area of their head. When they're
that's what I was gonna say. Is like maybe there's brain damage or like a underdevelopment.
Yeah.
I know in CT scans sometimes I've seen where they talk about, you know, the dark areas being, you know, different.
What's
people that are violent?
What's it called? The football players thing, like the Hernandez.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
CTE, like long-term damage, I guess. And usually, you know what? That does make a lot of sense because I do think that they are profiling people based on. I think they've looked at a lot of serial killer brains and stuff.
Yeah. Just about every one of them anymore. I'd imagine they kind of take a look at, you know, let's see what's under the hood type of situation. But they can also determine like profiles and stuff off of the way they did things, the demeanor they had from like interviewing people they knew and stuff like that. They build huge profiles, and if you ever watch that movie Mindhunter, that was kind of based off the whenever they were creating all that. So I mean, there's going to be a point in time where they can tell if you're more. They probably know now, like if you're more, you have more tendency to be a serial killer as a child. You know, they can kind of tell that now. Interesting thing I've always heard is serial killers have a lot of like common traits as politicians.
Makes sense, right?
It's kind of weird, like
sociopathic.
You gotta be a sociopath, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like really high up in CEOs and stuff like that too. So I don't know.
You would almost have to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Sarah.
I Googled it, and it says one of the most well-known brain abnormalities found in serial killers is a reduction in the size and activity of the prefrontal cortex. But interestingly enough, down here it says that Ted Bundy's brain was completely normal with no lesions or injuries or deformities. So I don't know, like how, like, is this iffy science? Is it?
It seems like pseudoscience to me. It sounds like it anyway.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Or Bundy was a complete and total sociopath.
I mean, he would have been a great politician. Like everybody that talks to him said he would have been a great lawyer and things like this. It's crazy. I don't know. There has to be.
Here's what. So I understand with the timelines that we're working on. You know, all of this was terrible with Charlie, and you know, I don't think there was much anybody could have done other than maybe if Terry did suspect him of killing anybody, she should have tried to and maybe she couldn't, maybe she was terrified, but that all I'm saying is that might have been the only way for him to have been discovered before all this happened, is if she turned him in or at least told somebody that she suspected this. Mm-hmm. But the aftermath of all this, especially the cold cases that were being investigated, the whole area down there was really devastated, and struggling to reconcile everything, because to his coworkers and stuff he was normal, and to like his sister, and then you've got the opposite side of it. You've got all the victims' families finally getting the news that they've figured out who brutally killed their loved ones. So it was just all around bad.
Right. So I wonder, and like I said, it may be something that you didn't find in your searches and everything, is so I'm assuming when he went to live with his grandparents that his siblings stayed with his father, who had survived.
Yeah, you can't find a lot at all. Like even his sister, I found a picture of her when she was younger, but it seems like after he killed his mother, that they may not have wanted to like be very close with him.
Right. Oh, and I totally get that. As a parent, that would not be something I think I could do, if my child, tried to kill me and had murdered, his mother and unborn sibling.
Yeah, this was the only picture of his sister that I could find. So this is the sister that he pointed the gun at, Angela, and it just, I mean, that's literally like simulation, right? You point the gun at it, and it jammed. It jammed, and that's the only thing that saved her life. And apparently, she really struggled after, it came out that he was a serial killer and that he did all of these things.
Right.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, it was her brother, and Herbert, who his dad, who he shot. I'm sure also that he probably didn't have a problem with him moving away to his grandparents either. You're always gonna, like, if your kid shoots you,
right. But I mean, I even wonder, like, did his grandparents know, or did they just say, "Hey, we're having problems with him. Can we send him down there?"
Could you imagine Thanksgiving dinner? Like,
right. I mean, even as his grandparents, I mean, because it either had to be he killed your daughter or he shot your son and killed your grandchild.
Yep.
And I find it hard to reconcile that. Is even as his grandparent, would I want him in my home? What happens next time he goes off the deep end into a trance?
Yeah.
I find that hard to wrap my head around. But I've never been in that position, so who knows?
Something with like we were talking about serial killers today who are operating, and they think a lot of them are truckers, just because of the sort of map of killings that go on today. But so like everything's listening and watching at this point. Like your car's listening and watching, your phone, all that good stuff.
These phones take a picture of you every like 15 seconds, by the way.
So you would think, like, if somebody out there is a serial killer today, the NSA, FBI, somebody would have to know, right?
Okay, I'll jump in. I know one of the big things they've done over the last few years, because my husband just about had a meltdown over it, is they have electronic logs. It's on your truck. It is constantly, they can look him up at any point in time and say, okay, we know he's here. We know how fast he's going and everything like that. A lot of companies have outward facing cameras, which his does. Some companies have in-cab facing cameras, so they can actually look and see their drivers at any point in time. So to me, if there's anybody out there that is currently and actively a serial killer driving a truck, it's going to be an owner operator, because if their truck's over a certain age, they don't have to have electronic logs and stuff like that.
If you believe Tom Segura, Garth Brooks is a serial killer, so I mean,
Stranger Things.
I don't know. I do love true crime. There was a point in time where I loved it so much, but what really broke me was researching Ed Edwards. Like, I researched him for like 3 weeks, and like just going through everything. I was like, I need to lay off of it for a little while, but it's kind of wild.
Now we remember why.
Yeah, now we remember.
That's I used to do a lot of it. Well, not too bad. I mean, I enjoyed it, researching and everything. But I guess at some point I must have blocked it out. But actually, my best friend growing up, her aunt was killed by a serial killer. And it was just like 4 or 5 years ago that I was just sitting there talking to my mom on the phone one day. I'm like, did they ever figure out if she had run away or whatever? She goes, no, a serial killer. I'm like, wait, what? And I did a ton of research, and it was such a small, area where he was at, because he was in Louisiana and Washington State. And it was in 1978. So just there was so little on this guy. And like I said, when they surrounded him in Washington State, he committed suicide. And, but, he was believed to have been guilty of 8 victims in Washington State. He had sexual assault victims from Washington State. He was a former police officer. And that's what got him caught up, once he came down to Louisiana, as they started putting the stuff with Washington together. And then in 78, over the course of a couple of weeks, they had, I think, 5 teenagers and 1 girl in her 20s that all went missing. And they actually never recovered her or one of the girls. So, they're just assuming because the person she was with when she went missing was found and was a victim, that she probably was also.
That's wild.
So it's crazy because, like I said, that's one I'd love to find more information on and just can't. So, small world. But and like I said, that's the only thing I can figure. I remember when she went missing, but for some reason I had totally blocked out the fact that it was a serial killer. So
yep. So that's Charles Brandt, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Charles Brandt. We do want to mention, I think we're going to do another sort of follow-up true crime where Sarah is going to tell some stories for us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to tease that. I don't know what we're going to do. It may be, I don't know, later this month or next month, some just whenever we're all free again.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I don't want to give too much away. So, I won't do a teaser. You could ask me something specifically. I'll try not to give too much away if you want to kind of keep it, keep it on the DL.
Yeah, we're going to keep it on the DL. I like that.
Give me the state. You don't have to.
No, it was, and actually this might be of interest to people. It was from Sandy Hook, Kentucky originally, but most of it didn't take place in Sandy Hook. Should I just kind of tell like a little bit though?
Just whatever you want literally, if you want to stay quiet about it, we'll lock it down until we get the.
Well, I feel like we need to tell them a little something so they remember it here. So my uncle was a serial killer.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty wild story. And so I'm going to come on here and I'm going to ramble aimlessly for an hour about how my uncle was a serial killer.
Wow.
And that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
I'm kind of wanting to get back into the true crime stuff. It's been too long. I've got hundreds of books in there I need to read.
I think it's good to sprinkle it in. Like we do a lot of stuff. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. We're going to be interviewing a few cryptozoologists coming up, and hopefully around October we will get to do some spooky stuff. We're talking kind of brainstorming some on location streams at some spooky places. If we can make it happen, maybe, I know, Sarah, you were talking about maybe like some spirit box sessions and stuff. That'd be cool.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That's how we're in the folk rolls. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you got a big old steaming pile of content.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all over the place. We do a little bit of everything.
But that's what makes it fun.
It is fun. Sometimes the subjects aren't fun. We everything with Charlie Brandt sucked. And we, hope the families and stuff are doing the best they can after all of that. So we don't take that lightly. I know we say things in jest sometimes, but it's not to be insensitive.
No, I think sometimes it's just to like break up the pure
Yes.
depression of it. Because, like I said, I mean, I can't imagine being that close to someone, and then find out that they were, a serial killer, or the fact that, being a close family member of a victim,
Right.
So,
Yep. Well, let's plug it out and head on out, guys. I gotta go to the gym. I'm trying to get fit.
Well, we get
you're
the
doing good.
every Friday we do at 7 p.m. Eastern, we do strange occurrences happening around the world, usually from the previous week. It could be anything. We were talking about the black hole toilet in space.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we were.
The big ocean that they found in the middle of space. We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
And just a ton of wild stories we usually bring to that. It's at 7 o'clock Eastern on Fridays, and then at 8 o'clock Eastern on Fridays, more esoteric show, Weird Awakenings. That one is on Weird Realities with a Y. And we talk about a little bit of everything. What did you say next week was on there?
Dead internet theory.
The dead internet theory. That'll be a good one. And Sarah, I know you have a ton of stuff going on, your books, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I have too much going on. I'm just hanging in there by a thread at this point, but yeah.
I don't know if you want to plug any. I don't know where people can find it.
Yeah, guys, if you're into what would you? I guess Appalachian folk stories. So I wrote a collection of short stories. Was inspired by. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. There's Hell for Certain is like an old book that was written back in like the 40s or 50s, where someone from the college, I think, went around and collected these wild, crazy mountain people stories. And it was one of my favorite books as a kid. And so I wanted to kind of like recapture Appalachian storytelling and kind of put it into like a modern environment. So it's some short stories thrown together. They're all kind of Appalachian themed, Kentucky themed. But they are available on Amazon right now. So if you just search for Ghost Mountain, also on my social media, I have links. You should be able to find it pretty easily.
And that is paranormally correct.
Interesting fact: all of my family on my mom's side is from Hell for Certain.
Really?
Over in Leslie County, yeah, that's where it's at. The story goes, some guy walked over there and went through the holler and came out. He said, "Well, this is Hell for Certain," and that's what joke. That's the story. And if you like sad country music, my buddy Brandon Lee Thompson's on Spotify. Go check him out. I'm actually going to be playing music with that fella unless he kicks me out because I suck.
Yep. And of course, we do Saturday stuff. The Saturday stuff's sporadic. We're going to get back with Sarah. Let Sarah tell us a cool story. Either, I don't know, just whenever, later this month, next month. But whenever we have stuff coming up, we usually post it on Twitter. So if you have Twitter, or if you don't have Twitter and you're just wondering what we have going on, usually we post promo stuff on there.
Yep.
At Where in the Folk for everything, wherever you're watching.
Yep. Just go and check that folk and shit out.
That's great.
That's a good way to end it. So thank you all for watching us. And because we are all watching you.
Peace.
Peace.